So, covering today is Purim, as you know, and last evening we had Mikra, or the reading of the scriptures, and we had Maharif prayers before that. And it was so joyful to see all of you all participate and read scripture. Now, if many of you all actually knew how to read the Hebrew, we could have all done Mikra in the original Hebrew. But nevertheless, it was a wonderful thing. And I was so blessed for those who read, and may God bless you all immensely and tremendously. We are closing Purim today, and it's also Shabbat. And Purim is following Shabbat this time. So it's 3 days of celebration in Israel. And normally, what happens among the Orthodox and the conservative and the Orthodox, they have a big party and they celebrate Purim in a very great way for reasons they understand. Nevertheless, we are going to understand Purim on a very different level because Purim also means something very, very great for us. But we've not understood it in its essence. And today, hopefully, I'm going to bring it out. And hopefully, I'm going to be able to, by the grace of God, to take all of you all to a higher level of light, a spiritual light, to understand, to differentiate between light and darkness, and mainly divine providence, which is Hashgacha Pratit, what you call in Hebrew. Now, divine providence is something that we all take for granted, and our minds are not tuned to God's providence in our lives. But truly, if you look at things in a very microscopic way and understand that everything exists in this world because of God's kindness and His divine providence. So if we start at that stepping stone as that foundation, you and me will be able to absorb and understand the bigger picture of what God is doing in this entire world. What is creation about, what we're doing, why are we here, what is the future going to be like. So all this put together, bundled together, will give us a very comprehensive understanding of life and the virtues of living this life. Nevertheless, since we're in Purim, we're going to understand Purim, but we're going to understand and read Purim and bring together its essence in a very different way this time. Now, in Luke 8:17, there is something that Yeshua says, which is very incredible. He says, "For there is nothing hidden that will not become visible, and nothing secret that will not be known and come to light." So he's talking all this in the backdrop of talking to his disciples about certain things that are happening. And he says, shout it out from the rooftop because there's enough light, so don't hold it. And he talks about this thing called hidden and that which has become revealed, which has become visible, right? So this is very much also a New Testament kind of concept as to things that are hidden, things that are going to be revealed, things that need to be revealed, right? Now, in the future, revelatory, prophetic, and whatever we want to say, in whichever angle we want to take it. There are hidden things, there are mystical things, and those are things that are revealed. But how are we going to reveal them? When is it going to be revealed? That is something that we need to get our minds to. Anyway, let's carry on and bring more context to Purim. Then in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6, it states, "For God who said," look at this statement very carefully. It says, "For God who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ, in the panim, in the face of Yeshua." This is very, very complex, and it's a very interesting topic that we need to understand as we continue learning and studying this today. So, in terms of Esther, the scroll of Esther. Everything is written on a scroll, right? It's called Megillat Esther. It's written on top in the Hebrew. Megillat Esther. Now, when we look at this word called Megillat, it's a Hebrew word that reads as scroll. It reads as scroll, but an actual has a more intrinsic and mystical meaning to it. Let's try and understand what these two words Megillat Esther mean. The shoresh, the root, for those who've studied the Hebrew, the shoresh and the root of the word Megillat is Megillah. The he in the end is feminine, right? Megillah. And the word Gala in Hebrew means to discover or to unravel something which is hidden. And what is hidden out here is Esther. Esther. So Megillat Esther, it is the unraveling, it is the pulling out, or is the revelatory aspect of who Esther, this personality of Esther is. So it also could be scroll, because Megillat is also referred to as scroll, but the true meaning is revelatory. It's unraveling of something. Okay, so the idea of hidden, as I was saying, and the revealed comes from the concept of God hiding his face from all of creation. This is something we need to understand as foundation, as yesod, to delve into the book of Esther. When God, the concept of God hiding his face from all of creation, it does not mean that he has cut off from creation or he has nothing to do with creation. It's just that he has stopped the flow of a thing called Hashgacha Pratit. Hashgacha Pratit. Hashgacha Pratit is divine providence. Divine providence now can be at two levels. One is the corporate level, one is the level of creation where God has given divine providence for everything to run on its own. And he's constantly monitoring things from a remote place, right? You understand, if you have a big campus or a big company or a very critical infrastructure or a industry, everything is monitored by CCTVs and cameras, but it's done from a remote place, right? So using that analogy, Hashgacha Pratit is God monitoring and handling everything from a remote place, although the visible presence of him is not seen with the human eye. And this divine providence is the structure of creation that God has put in, and everybody enjoys this divine providence. Young and old, sinner, non-sinner, everybody enjoys this providence. Therefore, the faith man wakes up in the morning and he is filled with emunah, whereas the sinner and the atheist also wakes up in the morning. And the very fact that he wakes up in the morning is because that divine providence is there to stay for the world to continue. So this divine providence is something we need to understand on a bigger picture. Hopefully one day when we are able to do a course on Hashgacha Pratit, I don't know when that is, but we will touch upon it. So this divine providence can be at a corporate level for everything to exist and carry on as we see creation and reality around us. And there is another level of Hashgacha Pratit that has got to do with the revelatory face or the shining divine light that shines upon something specific or an individual, as it is mentioned in Deuteronomy 31:18. Let's see what it says in Deuteronomy 31:18. It says, this is the time where God is giving a warning to the children of Israel just before they're going to enter into the land, saying, if they keep my commandments, it's good. If they don't, this is what I'm going to do. He says, Ve'anochi haseter. You see this word haseter from here? This word haseter is a word from where you get the word Esther. Haseter astir pane bayom hahu al chol haraha asher asa ki pana el Elohim acherem. Yet I will keep my face hidden on that day. God says. What do you say? Yet I will keep my face hidden on that day because of all the evil they have done in turning to other gods. This is very, very important. What do you mean that God can hide his face? Is it a simple thing, or is it just a thing that, okay, God's turned his face away, he must be angry, he'll get over it and he'll turn his face? No, it's not that. You see, the concept of hiding his face, or his face being hid from us by many, many layers of separation, of transcendental separation between God and us, is the idea and the concept that I have to break through these veils that are separating God and me because of my sin. Doesn't the book of Jeremiah say that your sin has separated you from your God, right? By these many, many levels and layers of sin. So this is very much a biblical concept, that there is a face of the eternal, and that face can shine upon all, or that face can shine on something specific, or on an individual. It's very important to understand that. Now, the scroll of Esther is so unique in its composition. We are going to see this because it's mind-blowing, that one learns about God's name never ever mentioned in the scroll even once throughout the story. Never in this one story is God's name mentioned, nor a reference to the eternal God, nor the reference to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, nor the reference to the God of Mordecai and the God of Hester. Nothing of the sort. There is no word emunah mentioned. There is no faith mentioned. Nothing is mentioned in this place. Why is it so that the complete reference to anything spiritual or godly concept is missing from the story? Neither does the story have any kind of spiritual miracles or activity ascribed to emunah, but plain, mundane human choices and situations that proceed and correct itself as in the everyday course of life. So there was a king, and there was Haman, and there was Mordecai, who was a Jew, and there was Esther. And something happened, and Esther becomes king, and then Haman comes to power, and he wants to destroy, and Mordecai plots, and Mordecai becomes powerful, Haman dies, everybody celebrates, end of story. This is everyday life. Every kingdom, every king, every empire, every state, every country, this is what happens. I mean, this is just normal life, right? It's mundane. It's absolutely, there's nothing to be alarmed about. Nothing to say, oh, what's so important about this story? Nothing. But that's the mistake we should never make, because I'm trying to ascertain and trying to put into your mind that the most mundane of things is where you will understand that divine providence is uniquely, specifically in this story for the Jewish people. For the Jewish people. And this is very, very important, which is why it is a grave mistake in surmising that no divine providence is involved in the story, and that the Eternal has abandoned the Jewish people to hardship, scorn, and death. I mean, look at examples of the Holocaust. 5 years of the Holocaust, 1939 to 1945, 6 years practically. They were tortured, ghettoed, silenced, gassed, slaughtered. 5 years, and there was no God involved in any of it. Nothing. Imagine the Jewish heart that believed in God for 3,500 years is going through the Holocaust and saying, where is Elohim? Where is Adonai? Where is God? It's a very difficult place to be in, friends. Extremely difficult place to be in. If you look at the Holocaust, which is very, very recent, look at October 7, 2023, what happened with Hamas in Israel. Can you imagine? They took babies and they skewed small infants in microwave ovens. Can you imagine that? What is the level of evil? And we are saying, God, where are you? I cannot see you. I cannot see your providence. I cannot see your saving grace. Help us. Right? This is very difficult, my friends. The Holocaust, the pogroms, and all the various things the Jewish people have had to endure throughout the history. Why? Only because of this emunah, and they looked up saying, where is divine providence? Where is Hashgacha? But God always comes through towards the end, because once the time of indignation is over and the spirit of impurity is removed from the land, God always comes through, but not in ways that we understand. So it is in the book of Esther. So I'm trying to tell you all that you may look at a story that is so mundane, that is so ordinary, a story of richness and kings and empires and usurpers and wars and grandeur. And this is humanity, but something's happening in the background. Let's move ahead and let's delve deeper into this. But before I go on to mystical depths of the story and talk to you all about these other things, I want to peek into the individual aspects of what we're talking about here today. Because this turns out to be the goal of Shiur, salvation. For every soul, for everybody. When as believers of faith in Yeshua, we go through these phases of emptiness, right? And I can challenge everybody that everyone has gone through this phase of emptiness and no divine inspiration. You have literally got up in the morning, opened your eyes, and you have been as empty as ever. And you wondered, Lord, what is this hole that I am in? What is happening? I don't feel a thing. I have no divine inspiration left inside of me. I cannot, I'm so dumbstruck that I cannot even open my mouth. We have all gone through this. And I want to challenge everyone today. This is what we're talking about. So what is going on? How does one negotiate or come to terms with the situation that he's in? How does one find his way or crawl out of this horrible place he finds himself in? I mean, let's say that, okay, I fell in love with this wonderful lady 5 years ago, and I got married, and everything was good. Everything seemed so beautiful, great wedding, great families, a wonderful life and opportunities. And 5 years down the line, everything is broken and tattered and shattered. It's gone, finished. The dream is over. What happened? What happened? In 3 to 4 years down the line, the marriage is falling apart. There's hate, there's anger, there's distrust, and all these things happen. Who would have thought that this would be? I mean, what I thought it was, okay, accepted of God. God has given me this. I'm doing the right thing, right person, right time. And suddenly everything is just crashed, landed back to earth, and you're sitting on the ground and saying, what has happened? This happened to everybody in life, friends. Don't look surprised. This is how everything plays out. Maybe it's a vocation, maybe it's a job. I made a wrong choice. The realization of a wrong choice is driving me crazy because I'm put to the test now. Maybe it's a business venture that just failed over time and left you in a quandary. Maybe one sees financial burdens just come out of nowhere and pressure starts rising. I mean, just think, they're just sitting and study, there's this financial uh, cascade just hits you, boom. So from where's this come? And something else, and something else. And suddenly you realize, man, I'm in a pit. How am I going to handle all of this? Right? Especially if you've got family and wife and children and education expenses and medical expenses, and you're just all over the place. Now, please don't think that I'm sounding very negative, but this is reality, this is life. Because when this hits in everybody's life, you are questioning, saying, where is God? I have spoken to many people, and I've also counseled my own heart so many times. And I said, where is God? Where is God? In all of this, your immune is tested. You're losing hope. There is this dark cloud just hanging over your consciousness. And the worst part that kicks you is there were people in your life that showed you such tremendous kindness. And they gave freely, and they gave this, and they gave that, said this and that. Those very acts of kindness now have come to haunt you like this evil thing. Those very people have just become this evil thing in your life. So what is happening? What's wrong with you? Even an act of kindness in this time is this huge evil thing. And you're wondering, like, wasn't this person so good to me? Wasn't this person showed kindness to me? And this, and now why is it different? Why is it different? Man, I tell you, sickness, ill health, maybe you're struggling with it. Maybe you have someone in the family that's struggling with it, and you're financially down, drained, physically diseased, on your bed for a long period of time. Whatever's happening, you can cry tears of blood, pray, go to a prophet, go for deliverance, all these things, get a little relief from here. But until the time of change and rectification does not come, which is an appointed time, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen. This is the way God's put this world to work. When you don't have and you can stand in confidence, it's a great virtue. But be most scared when you have. Because when you have, you should be most scared that I don't know when God is going to test me. So these times of emptiness, these times of testing, these times of when we go through all this is when it is said that God hides his face from you for reasons and wisdom only known to him. Maybe we deserved some kind of problems. We deserved it. Maybe he's refining you. Maybe he's refining your character. Maybe he's demanding you to change certain aspects about your life. He's doing all these things because his face is life and spiritual and material prosperity. Nothing can withstand the divine effect of God's shining countenance upon your soul. Which is why the Aaronic blessing is the epitome of this concept that we're talking about. Which is why it was instructed to Moses to require Aaron to pronounce this blessing on the children of Israel, as it says in the book of Deuteronomy 6:22-27, as a blessing to be pronounced upon the children of Israel on special occasions. It says, Odevai daber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daver al Aaron, ve'el banav lemor, ko tavrakhu et bnei Israel emor lahem. Thus you shall speak to the children of Israel, to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the way you will bless Israel. Say to them, Yevarechecha Adonai shmarecha, ve'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikunecha, yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and protect you. The word shamar is to guard you. Yishmarecha, Ya'er Adonai, from or, let the Lord shine. Adonai panav, his face, alecha v'yikunecha, and his grace, kanun, from the word chen, from the way you get the word noach, grace. May God's light, radiance of his face shine upon you, and his grace and kindness be upon you. Isa Donai Panavalecha. May the Lord lift. Isa, from where you get the word Moshe, to lift, to elevate. Isa Donai, may the Lord lift Panavalecha, your face. May he lift your face towards him. Vayasem lecha shalom, and give you wholeness, completeness, and peace. Do you know what a great and big, very, very big prayer this is? We say this prayer every Saturday morning for Shacharit, taking into account that God's divine providence is working in everybody's life, that his face is shining in everybody's life, friends. Everybody. It is therefore completely essential that God always have his face shine upon each one of us. As we read in Deuteronomy, where the providence was hidden because of their sins and transgressions. However, I would like each one of you to know God's corrective actions are the blessing in its essence. So even if he's hiding his face, it's not a negative thing. It's a loving, corrective process that he started in your life. Nothing that the Eternal does to us in this life has inherent evil intent for destruction. Nothing. It is redemptive and purifying in nature, bringing us to a better and a higher spiritual place than we were in the first place. For those not connected to him through Yeshua, the question of everlasting destruction or second death, I would not like to comment on that right now, expound upon it, as I've been clear about how God can destroy something that is a part of himself, something that's still, created within him. It's unsolved by me, so I don't know how to answer that. So don't hold me to it. But I just want to put this thing together that God doesn't get up in the morning, and says, okay, I'm going to punish you now, and I'm going to punish you so badly for what you've done till you come to your senses. I don't think God ever thinks that way. That's not the way God functions. God will look at you and say, you've done this transgression. Now, you will have to go through this corrective process, which is necessary, this pain necessary to bring you out and for you to learn from it and rise above it. He is not there to indict us in a way of vengeance like another human being, with hate. There is no hate with God. Another person in this world will indict you through hate or jealousy or any other. It is not God who functions that way. I want you all to understand this very clearly. It is not God who functions like this. Whatever he does is redemptive and loving in nature, even if you're going through the worst hell of whatever you're going through in life right now. There is an assuming good end to it. So this directive precedence that whatever we do or accomplish through Emunah and spiritual walk, it must achieve the level of divine providence. God's face shining upon us and our face lifted up to him. This is very, very clear. Nothing really matters or is necessary. This concept is therefore termed as salvation. How do I know it's termed as salvation? Shua is the word for salvation. And the yud appended to the word Shua in the front is Yeshua, Jesus. So we have Shua, salvation, and Yeshua, because the yud is appended to it in the front as a prefix. And this yud gives it a future tense. He will save. He is going to save. It is no better ascertained or brought out in the story of Cain and Abel. If you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 3, where it says that both Cain and Abel brought their offerings to the Lord. Okay. And Cain brought his offerings of the earth and produced of his agriculture and what all he brought. But Havel brought for himself a korban of a much higher level to give as a matan to God, as a korban matan to God. And then the Bible says, and God heeded the korban of Havel. Heeded it. This word heed is the word vayesha in Hebrew, vayesha, which is an anagram in the Hebrew and maybe also in English. Yeah, it's probably the anagram of both. It's an anagram. If you just scramble the words together, the consonants together, it's an anagram of Yeshua. The word heed is the word Yeshua in Hebrew. So when it says that God heeded, that means he looked upon Havel and said, Havel, what are you doing? I accept what you're doing. And when he looked on Havel, his countenance, his face looked upon Havel, that is Yeshua, that is salvation. That is salvation, my friends. So he done that knowing that Cain is going to kill him. So before Cain would lay a finger on him or kill him, he gives him Vayesha. He gives him Yeshua. Salvation. He saves him. He saves him. Our understanding of salvation is so incomplete, right? We have to understand the bigger aspects of everything. Nevertheless, we have to understand how God deals with each one of us and his divine providence. This Vaisha is therefore the healing face of God, and is none other than Yeshua himself. Therefore, the verse we read in Corinthians is what? Now you'll understand this verse in Corinthians, which says, for God who said, let light shine out of darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ, face of Yeshua. The New Testament is the edut, is the testimony or the finality of so many scriptural truths, friends. It's not funny if you all know this in its essence. It is serious business. Serious business. Okay, now let's come on. Let's get a little. I'm setting up the foundation for everything. So divine providence on a personal level is essential to every human being, as everyone has his own Megillah. Everyone has his own Megillah. Everyone is unraveling his life, coming out from the darkness into light, and wanting to lift his face to his Creator and say, Lord, lift my face in your kindness and in your generosity and kindness, and you shine your face upon me, that we can communicate and speak and talk face to face. Panim le pani. The book of Genesis says that Yitzhak prayed for his wife face to face with God. And then she conceived. Rivka conceived. So this face to face is a very essential concept. Nothing is changed then, nothing is changed even till now. Okay, it's very, very important to understand this. So we have our own Megillah. We have our own hidden things that need to be brought out. The darkness removed, the light shine on each one of us, and we are writing and we're unraveling our own Megillah, and we're experiencing our own revelatory experience. If that is not happening, you got to set this in motion immediately and ask God, Lord, why am I not in this process? Everyone receives of it good and evil in their existence. Even the sinners of this world receive corporate divine providence that is set in permanent motion throughout creation, which is why everything still exists and creation continues without end in sight. This is by default for all life. The higher level of divine providence is God specific. Favor on those who are connected to him and do his bidding. Salvation for such that inherit the earth. the basis of Megillat Esther. And now, since we know this eternal truth, let's use this understanding to delve deep into the secrets of the Megillah to understand what God has done and will do in the future to all those who call upon His name. Now, last evening we read the full Megillah, and we read all 10 chapters. And I told you, all 10 chapters means something very, very specific. So I'm going to break down each chapter in its essence, not in the full. We don't have time for that. And I'm going to stress on some very, very important things that are very esoteric, very deep mystical things which I have not heard before. Now, for those who will find this a little difficult, it may bounce over your head, please talk to me later, because maybe you've not been connected to the yeshiva and you've not been learning with us regularly. So you may find it a little difficult, but just hold on. Please have patience and hold on, and I will be there to answer anything you'll have. Okay, let's look at the secrets of this Megillah. Let's look at the setting now. First, the setting is what? What is the story all about? This is a time from the Galut. The word Galut is the exile. Galut is exile, from where we get the word Hit Galut, the revelation. The book of Revelation, he was called Hit Galut, the revelation of Yeshua, right? So Hit Galut is the revelation and the coming out of that revelation of that thing which is hidden. When the children of Israel were in the exile in Babylon, and the Persian Empire conquers Babylon, and the Jews have spread all over the empire from Nubia to India. By the way, the word for India we read yesterday was the word Hodu. India is called Hodu, which is a beautiful word because Hod is a part of the Sfirot, right, which is called Thanksgiving. Hod. So India effectively in the Bible is called Thanksgiving. It was the time of the Anshe Knesset HaGadola, men of the Great Assembly, who gathered together when they were in 70 years of exile and got together, and they formulated the modern kind of rabbinical Judaism that you see today, in short, of whom Mordecai was one of the main proponents of these 70. There were totally about 120 in his existence at different times. Everybody from Daniel to Mordecai to most of the prophets, all these prophets, everybody were all part of this 120 Anshe Knesset in Babylon, and they formulated modern Judaism. Okay. Achashverosh, it's written as Ahasuerus in the Bible, but it's pronounced as Achashverosh, is the grandson of King Kurush, Cyrus. Now, Cyrus was the one who told Ezra and Nehemiah, I am the Mashiach. Your God has appointed me. Now, please go and build your temple, right? And 70 years had ended then, and now his grandson, that is Achashverosh, okay, who's coming from the lineage of Kurush, is lineage of Kurush, that he now brings Esther and marries Esther, okay, and this is the time of that story. So it's way beyond the time of the exile, and after the exile was over, many of the Jews stayed back in the diaspora. They never went back to the land of Israel. And I'm telling you, there are people all over the world who don't know that they're Jewish because they've stayed back in the diaspora and they have no record. Okay. So it's this time where the exile is over and they are still in the diaspora, they're all over the place, and the setting is the time when Ahasuerus is king. But make no mistake, the effect of the story reaches the whole new world. And in fact, it is said that Ahasuerus ruled for more than 250 provinces, actually. But during the time of Vashti and during that time, he had lost a lot of provinces. And then he had these wars with Greece and the battles of couple of battles, Ptolemy, something in Greece, and he had these expeditions in Egypt and Greece, and he had lost a lot of provinces. And by the time the Bible is writing, it comes down to 127 provinces. And after he gets married to Esther, and then he builds the kingdom again, He is back to more than 250 provinces. That's what history says. And by the way, 127 is the gematria value for Sarai. So Sarai in own right is 127. That refers back to Esther, because she was queen of 127 provinces. So there's some connection of their friends, but it's not the time to talk about it right now. Anyway, but what happened in Shushan affected the whole world, and there were Jews all over the world. So even the land of Israel was part of the empire. So the Jews in Israel also would have felt and were subject to everything that happened. Okay, Mordecai. Mordecai, his real name is Patakia. Mordecai is his Persian name. Okay, his name is Patakia, which means Patak in Hebrew means to open. Yah is God's name, right? Patach Yah. The Lord opens up that which is hidden. And Esther, her real name is Hadassah. Hadassah is actually myrtle. Have you ever experienced the fragrance of a myrtle tree? Oh, it is the most beautiful thing. Go to a myrtle tree, a true myrtle tree, take a couple of its leaves, and just smell it. That samim, sometimes they use it on Shabbat to end the Shabbat, the Havdalah, right? They break the myrtle leaves and they smell it, and it invigorates your soul in such a beautiful way. Oh man, you should smell the myrtle leaves. It's really beautiful. So that's Hadassah. She's called Esther because they are in the diaspora, they're in Shushan, they're in the Persian Empire. They were initially taken to Babylon, and then the Persian Empire conquers Babylon, and then the Medians and the Persians together conquers Persia, and now it's a Medo-Persian Empire. By the time Achashverosh has a child from Esther, that child is Darius II, Dariavesh II. Okay, so this is the history basically, and now the story of Esther revolves around the king. And this is very important to understand. It revolves around the king, implying the eternal God. So whenever you're reading the word king in the storyline, take it as an implication that it is from God, unless it is specifically mentioned Achashverosh. It is almost like the internal functionality of a king that is being revealed and tested. So what are we talking about? We're talking about this personality called Achashverosh that is being revealed and tested from his internal personalities. This is what's going on inside of him, signifying how one must understand the functionality of the revelation of God emanation into this world. Therefore, the 10 chapters that we read yesterday have to be put into context of the Sphirot, of the 10 emanations of the Sphirot that exist in the revelations of God in this world. This is very, very essential now. So 10 chapters, 10 Sphirot. Very, very interesting. Now, those who don't know about the Sphirot, I really don't have the time to explain this to you all, but the Sphirot are the 10 levels of emanation coming from the eternal God on different levels, coming down, and each emanation till we reach a physicality called Malkut and kingdom, right? And kingdom is where God will be king over all the earth. And we are waiting for the kingdom, right? Jesus himself says, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." So we're waiting for the 10th and the last emanation of God to be king on this earth. He is king, right? So that last emanation is Malkut. So the 10 Perachim, the 10 chapters, Perech, has 10 chapters, each emphasizing the 10 emanations of the Sphirot. The first 3 cognitive are in the crown, the Keter. The Keter, the king wears a crown. With this crown that adorns the highest level of the Sphirot on the head. that's taken as a secret delve into what is to be unraveled. Okay, so the crown combines the three cognitive processes, that is Chokmah, Bina, and Dat, okay, which is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and the seven emotive, that is Chesed, Gevurah, Netzach, Hod, Tiferet, Yisod, and Malchut, which is Chesed, kindness, Gevurah is might, Netzach is victory and overcoming, Hod is thanksgiving, Tiferet is beauty, Yisod is foundation, and Malchut is kingdom, with God will reign on this earth as king. This is very, very important. Now, when we study the earlier course of Adam Kadmon, the emanations and the Parzuphim triads of stable chaos until the final emanation of kingdom is reached on earth, we will now endeavor to put each chapter into the correct level of sphera. Through the process of divine providence, we would have reached a wonderful place of spirituality, enlightening. In fact, by now, each one of you all are already filled with a tremendous amount of light, even as I'm speaking to you all. This is amazing, friends, I'm telling you. Enlightening our soul and raising it up to the highest level, and our faces being lifted up to God Himself. May this be true and beautiful. Okay, this needs, okay, thank you. So, Keter, let's look at the crown first, that has the three levels of, the three cognitive levels, that's Chokmah, Bina, and Dat. Okay, and then we'll move on to the 10. So, Keter, or crown, the word Keter in Hebrew, a crown, is also an anagram for karet. Karet means to chop off, cut off. That's it. The gematria value, that is equal to 620, if you take the word Keter and you put it into gematria, 620. This number is a total of 613 plus 7. The 613 commandments given to Moses and the 7 Noahide laws together make 620. That means the 620 rays of emanation coming out from that ineffable light, from Ein Sof, from that light which is never-ending light. It's 620 total rays of light are emanating this entire world, but it is too powerful. Therefore, it has to go through different steps of step down, step down, step down for this world to exist and live. Okay, we've done that in Adam Kadmon. So total 620, and that's crown, Keter. The crown has three cognitive emanations: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. We studied this in much detail when we done Tishba Av, if you remember, last year. Da'at, which is knowledge, is usually left out of this. It's usually Keter, Chokmah, and Bina. That's the crown, wisdom, and understanding. But Da'at is left pretty much insignificant out of this, and there's a reason for it. Why? Because that bridges the cognitive and the emotive aspects of a human being. So it takes what the wisdom and the understanding is doing, and it processes it out, and it filters. It is like a channel that takes from the above and filters it down to the rest of the physicality. So if the top is processing pure light, that is taking that emona, that light, and filling the rest of physicality with light. If the source on top is only darkness and evil, it's pulling that evil and throwing it down. Or if there is a mixture of light and darkness, then both the light and the darkness in a chaos are being processed to dark. So it's a conduit between the cognitive and the emotive processes of a person, right? Why are we doing this? Because we're talking about the king. We're talking about Achashverosh. What is happening in Achashverosh? And the duality that's happening in Achashverosh is what the book of Esther is talking about right now. So I hope you all have got this. Okay, so that it is the level of that knowledge where the thoughts become a full-bodied confidence and reality and spreads over the entire physicality of the human. Therefore, it is dependent upon the above two and mostly not emphasized in the Sfirot that much. The Keter is 620 rays of light emanating from the Ein Sof, the unending light, the divine light of God Himself, through which all reality exists and continues to exist. That the crown, the Atik Yamin, the Ancient of Days, the man, the Ancient of Days. Ezekiel sees the Ancient of Days, Atik Yamin, who's sitting on the throne that resembles this gray-haired person with a big beard. He's called the Ancient of Days. The crown of the Ancient of Days is also referred to as the divine will. So the divine will is flowing to the wisdom and the understanding, and it's to the conduit of that knowledge, it's pervading all the lower worlds. Okay. So karet or keter is the same word basically, it's just an anagram of each other. It works both ways like a two-edged sword. And it cuts both ways. If the origin of a will of a person originates in evil, it gets cut off. Correct. And the Bible talks about that if a person sins, especially in the Old Testament, if he sins, his soul will be cut off from Israel. Correct. That's what it talks about. That means the divine flow has been cut off from this person. That is it. He may be existing with you, living in a house, living in the outskirts, working with you, but he has no share in the world to come because the divine flow has stopped flowing through his daath into his physicality. In the sight of God, he's already a zombie, dead person walking, dead man walking. That's it. So in chapter 2:17, Esther gets crowned as queen. And in chapter 6, verse 8, Mordecai gets crowned as a premier with tremendous power in all the kingdom. So that is Malkut. Now, towards the end of the story, they have reached the place of Malkut, kingdom. But before we reach the level of Malkut, which is kingdom, we need to go through all the 10 levels of Sfirot, which other means the 10 chapters of the book of Esther, and study each of them briefly, because we don't have the time. Others is going to take many, many sessions to go through all of them. But I've just compiled everything in something small, friends, that I can share with you. Okay. And I hope by now it has become clear to every one of you as to what to expect in learning the admonition of God's divine providence in this world. Okay. We are not going to get this teaching in any place. No theological seminary will give you this. No person has this teaching. This is God's grace in your lives, friends. Receive it with just beauty and thank God what you're receiving. This is what God has given us. And even when I was composing this, I was literally in tears and saying, Lord, what a beautiful thing you've given us, Lord. So friends, you're a privilege today. Thank God for what you're receiving. Chapter 1, the king, Ahasuerus, the crown. Look at this. It says over there, Vayehi beime Ahasuerus. Who Ahasuerus? Amalek Mehudu from India. Mehudu ve'ad Kush Sheva ve'esrin ume'a Medina. Vayehi, and it came to be in the days of Ahasuerus. Who? This is Ahasuerus. Why does it have to superfluously repeat itself? It happened in the days of Ahasuerus. This is the Ahasuerus. Are you understanding? It happened in the days of Ahasuerus, that Ahasuerus who reigned over 120 provinces from India to India. It's emphasizing that this is the Ahasuerus, where something specific has happened. This is Ahasuerus. Who Ahasuerus? Molech. Who, if you all know the Hebrew, Molech, the vav, it's a defective vav, it's supposed to be a vav there. The defective vav is present tense. It's not future tense. It's not past tense. Okay. This is Molech, who is the king, pointing to something specific of great importance. The will of the king is being played out in the story. This is divine providence, and this is being played out in the vessel of the physical king Ahasuerus. So the Torah subtly highlights the importance of what God is about to do in Shushan. Oh, now this changes the understanding of everything. Ahasuerus is only the vessel of the redemption that God is using, or the tool rather, that God is going to use to play out this great miracle, but it's absolutely normal and mundane in its essence. This is what it is saying. So that's chapter 1. It talks about Achashverosh and how he has grown in such wealth, and he holds a feast, right? You know he holds a feast, right? What was the feast about? Oh, we'll come to that a little later. And he holds this feast, and everything happens, and he calls Vashti, and you know the story, right? He removes Vashti. We don't have time to get into all that. And then chapter 2 comes in, and we introduced to Mordecai and to Esther. Okay. Chapter 2, which is the level of Chokmah. So the first level is of Keter, the crown, right? Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the level of Chokmah, Mordecai. It is here when Mordecai is introduced into the story in chapter 2. And many people ask me, 1 second, isn't Mordecai a person who is from the tribe, who is the son of Kish from the tribe of Benjamin? And why is he called a Jew? Why is he called a Jew? Because being a Jew does not depend on you being from the tribe of Judah. That's completely wrong. You can be from any of the tribes and yet practice being a Jew. And in fact, if you are connected to Yeshua, because he's the perfect light, you have to consider yourself as Jewish as Yeshua was. Even you and me can be Jews just as Yeshua was, because we are connected to him. Doing a DNA test and this test and that test does not make anybody a Jew. I'm being very, very clear about this, friends. Okay, so Mordecai is called a Jew, okay, and he's introduced the level of Chokmah in chapter 2, because he's at the level of Chokmah because all the prominent people of the kingdom were invited to the feast of Achashverosh, and Mordecai did not go. Now, it does not say this in the storyline, but the sages say that he did not go because there was a certain wisdom about Mordecai as to foresee that something is going to happen in the future. And he had this one eye on this person called Haman. So therefore, many of the Jews told him, come on, you're invited, we'll all go. And a lot of Jews went to this feast. When they went to the feast, they enjoyed this feast. And what did Haman do? Haman fed on their endorsement. Haman consolidated power with the help of the Jews and the other people and the other tribes and the other provinces. And he put together this endorsement because Haman was this great guy for everybody. Mordecai never went. He stayed away. And when Haman got the endorsement and he got this prominence, like a true politician, right? It is the people and especially the Jews who gave him the power and the authority through their compliance. It started at the feast, which happened a couple of years before the story actually started. Couple of years before the story started. So where do we find, sorry, I need to change this. Where do we find the Mordecai as a source in the scripture? Now, it says in Exodus chapter 30, verse 23, it says, Mordor. It uses the word Mordor, which is taken from the Aramaic, which is Mor is Mer. And Dror, if you put that in Aramaic, it means Dakia, meaning something of transformation. Oh, so Mordecai was like the summer of transformation from a time of true transformation where the time of the prophets were getting over, and then they were coming into the time of the scribes, the Pharisees, and the rabbis. So he was this transformation and this era from prophets to sages and rabbis. What came out of Babylon and Persia after the exile were the setting up of the rabbinical schools in Israel and the rabbinical schools in Persia and in Babylon, the great schools of Susa and Pumbedita, and there were massive yeshivas and yeshivot in Babylon and in Israel. If you read the history, one day, if we have time, we'll go to the history. It's really fascinating, just as an understanding. And this is what came out of it. So Mordecai was this transformation of the prophets of Jeremiah and Isaiah and all these other prophets to the time where the power now consolidated in the hands of the sages and the rabbis. It's very interesting to know. Very, very interesting to understand, because as we go through, we're going to understand, why this is happening. The bulk of what we're going to talk today is in chapter 3. Because chapter 3 is the time that introduces us to Haman. And this is the real big one, friends. Just gear up. We have a long study today and probably take another hour, but please bear with me, because you will never get this information anywhere else, friends. Okay. Chapter 3 introduces Haman. And this is a biggie. It's rather a shocker that Haman is mentioned in the level of Bina. Mentioned in the level of Bina. How can Haman be mentioned at the level of Bina? It's shocking. It is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination of the king. So now Achashverosh is got the wrong counsel around him, and he's listening to all the wrong and the evil reports that are coming to him. And his evil inclination is very, very strong at this point of time. And that is represented to Haman. That is represented to Haman, whose voice is being elevated over the good inclination. So the good inclination in King Achashverosh is practically neglected. He's not listening to the good inside of him. He is listening to Haman, the evil inclination. Now, what is the root of Haman? Okay, we know that he is the son he's an Agagi, and who's the son of Amalek, right? We know his root. That King Saul should have actually done away with, but that sin is playing out right now. So God has to deal with it once and for all. But there's more to it. We're going to see why. What is the root of Haman? There is a precept in scripture, and I want you to take note of this, that anytime a word or a concept appears in the Bible for the first time, that is the time you have to take that as the root and the source of that word or that essence or that concept. So the first time Haman is mentioned in the Bible, we have to search where in the Bible is Haman mentioned. Like we researched in Exodus chapter 30 about Mordecai, about Mar Dakia, right, in Aramaic, which Mordecai. Where is Haman mentioned in the scripture for the first time? And then we will understand the essence of who Haman is and what we are actually dealing with. Okay, so where is the spiritual root of Haman? Okay, in chapter 3 of the book of Genesis, after they sin and they cover themselves with fig leaves, and they hear the voice of the Lord of God walking in the garden in the noon of the day, and then God calls out to them, and he doesn't get an answer, and then he tells Adam, he says, "Vayomer mi hagid lecha ki arom ata." Who told you you were naked? Then he uses the word Hamin ha'etz. Hamin ha'etz. It's just a nikud. But the word Hamin is Haman. Hamin ha'etz asher sivitecha le'abelti achol mimenu akhalta. Who told you you were naked? Did you eat of the tree from which I forbidden you to eat? That's the translation. Let me paraphrase this now. It says, did you catch the word hamin? Ha'etz? Hamin. This is just a different nikud, but the word is the same, haman. Which means, if I paraphrase this, it means, who told you that you were naked? Is it from or on account of the tree that I had instructed you from eating, which you ate? Akhalta. So we see that the source of Haman is from Garden of Eden. Friends, this is amazing. And that represents the evil inclination that was inciting Kavva, and she could not resist and shared it with Adam. And this is carefully planned out, a strategy well built by the serpent. Now, the Bible also says that the serpent was growing more crafty and manipulative and intelligent as time went by. That's the word that's used. We're not saying that he was more intelligent. It says he was growing more intelligent and he was learning rapidly to be super. This is who the serpent was. Now the serpent is Nakash. The word Nakash is serpent. If I use the gematria of Nakash, is 358, which is also the same gematria for the word Mashiach. Many of you all will be surprised with this. 358. Nakash is also Mashiach. So friends, what is happening? What is happening inside Akash Verosh right now? As I told you, he's listening to the evil inclination. The evil inclination, that is Haman, Hamin Ha'etz. And Haman is connected to the Yetz. What is the Yetz? Is that tree which we're going to talk about. And the Yetz is also the wood. The pole that he set up in his backyard to hang Mordecai on. That is why Moses had to raise the copper serpent in the wilderness to heal those bitten by the snakes in the desert. But this tree, this wood, was on which Haman himself was slain and impaled. The same tree which he enticed Chava with. This is all representing the evil inclination. In Ahasuerus, Haman was the evil inclination, voice that was reigning supreme until the feminine voice, the Bat Khol, or we say the soft, tender voice of the Holy Spirit. In Hebrew, it's called Bat Khol, the voice of the daughter, the beautiful voice. You know, Father, the Son, the mother, and the daughter make a perfect family. That is the ideal. That is the ideal format of a family, because you have two males and two females. That reflects the four-name tetragrammaton name of God, Yud He Vav He. Yud He Vav He. The four is the combination of the perfect family, father and son. And then you have the Holy Spirit, right? And you have the Bat Khol, the voice of God, Bat Khol, the daughter. That's a different study, that's a different topic for another day, friends. But I just want to put you into this right now, make you understand this, okay? So this Bat Khol, the daughter, that is represented by Estaude, Hadassah. Until she does not come and present herself before the king, voicing the Bat Khol, the good inclination, okay, and putting to test the evil inclination in Ahasuerus. It is when Ahasuerus now shifts from the evil inclination to the good inclination, and the story now changes in this aspect. So this Bat Khol of the Holy Spirit entreated him to consider listening to the good inclination. And this is when the Yetzer HaTov took over and victory started flowing defeating the evil inclination in Ahasuerus. So this level, this war, this overcoming had to happen at a certain level. It had to happen in the level of Bina, right? Bina, which is Bin Yah, son of Yah. Who is the son of God? Yeshua. Yeshua. Yeshua represents the overwhelming, pure, perfect, good inclination, light, uh, radiance, the Zohar, the perfection of God Himself, in which there is no evil inclination. In which there is no evil inclination. And which God had to use to overcome the poison of the serpent and destroyed death and destruction. Now, hold on. Just go slow out here. I'm proposing something to you all which is very, very deep. That knowledge that follows, as I told you, is the bridge between the cognitive and the emotive of the person. When Haman was advising Ahasuerus with the evil inclination, his full physicality and being and his mind, his authority was filled with the poison, the Zuama, much like the serpent done with Chava and Adam then. But when the voice of the Lord spoke and her face came before Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus turned and looked and started entertaining Hadassah, Esther, because she was a revelation to Ahasuerus, the hidden things that were being revealed, and he took a fancy to her. And now it is he who is turning his face away from the evil to the pure and to the good, and therefore his da'at, his knowledge, is being rectified in this aspect. Thus, it will absorb. The da'at, as I said before, is a conduit of either the good or the evil or the mixture of both. It will absorb the evil or the pure and the good and filter into the low regions of the physical world. Now, this is important. Now, listen, this is very, very important for you to gather. The sin of Adam and Chava was when the mixture happened of good and evil. So before they sinned, they understood and they looked on the good things and they understood it perfectly. And they looked on the bad and the evil things and they knew about it. God told them, this is evil and this is good. It was not that they were not conscious of the good and the evil. They were conscious of the good and the evil. They knew what it is all about. But it never affected them in any possible way. But when they sinned, this mixture got mixed inside of them. The chaos got mixed. It became a chaos inside of them, and which was outside now went inside of them, and they were in total chaos. They developed a duality of good and evil inside of them. So before the sin, both these aspects were external and could not merge into a chaos. However, after they sinned, the chaos erupted by way of mixing of the good and evil inside of them. What filtered down to knowledge and da'at was like chaos and poison affecting the full body. The transformation that Mordecai brought in was the counter effect to the poison of Haman. So he was the kind of the Mashiach of his time that was holding back this poison of Haman, okay, poison of the evil, and he balanced out how he completely removed the evil inclination from the king, from Ahasuerus, and took over. So Mordecai is the transition of the rabbis. Now, why did I say it's the transition of the rabbis? Because in its time, during the exile, and for that history period, where the rabbis and the sin existed and were formed, it all started from Babel. And then came the concept of Ibka Mistabara, which we studied before. When you first, if you'll remember, what is Ibka Mistabara? Intuition and counterintuition. inside each person, which is the mixture of this good and evil. So every person now, after the sin, is struggling with this uh, yes or no, good or bad. Is it evil? Is it not evil? Is this right? Is this wrong? Should I? Should I not? Is this better than this? It's it's a chaos. It's a complete chaos, and we're living this chaos every day of our lives. Every day of our lives. So now, what I'm going to tell you is very, very essential because you all will understand something really amazing today. Now, this is in no way uh, putting down or demeaning what the scribes and the Pharisees have done, what they've this thing. Okay, uh, in their time, in this thing, they have done whatever they had to do. But I'm just trying to put into perspective how this has evolved over time. Okay, and you all will understand this now. So, uh, what came out of this ipka mistabara, intuition and counterintuition, was the duality that exists in the human being. That comes out in way of debate. So one person says, no, this is what the Bible says, and I think it is this. The other person says, no, it may be this. So if that person is right, then even I also could be right, because everyone has his own reference of truth now. Do you realize this? It's so difficult to find truth because everyone has his own truth and there's no reference to truth at all. So when the scribes and the Pharisees came out, they sat and they took this and they debated, they expounded, they put in their opinions, they made the Gemara. The Gemara was put together and more formed into the Talmud. And then we have this whole literature of the Talmud and the Gemara, which is a work of the oral Torah and put together, and it became a volume. And modern day Judaism works compiled on the Talmud and the Gemara, which come from the oral Torah with the written Torah. Now, why is this important? And why are we talking about this? Because the transition, as I told you, from the prophetic to the rabbis and scribes came from Mordecai in Babylon, and from Babylon came the scribes and Pharisees to modern day Israel 2000 years ago. Okay, so in the time of Yeshua, he had a very tough time in his lifetime, trying to eradicate the duality because he was of the voice of the good inclination. So just picture now the perfect light, the great, wonderful, perfect light in Yeshua, and in him there is no Yetzer Hara, absolutely no Yetzer Hara. And he is looking at the Judaism of his day that is in this ipka mistabara, this intuitive and counterintuitive, and they're debating each other, and they are taking concepts and they're building on the concepts and they're making it difficult, and they're putting hard, laying hard restrictions and all these things. On this account, many of the hard impositions laid by the Tzaddikim and the Pharisees were challenged by Yeshua because of this reason. And his voice was constantly calling out the duality inside the Pharisees and the Sadducees because they gave themselves up to delve deeply into this tree of knowledge that was dealing with his duality. Yes, no, good, bad, pure, impure, this. And it was just leading to a big thing of self-righteousness and going that way. And this is what was produced out of what happened. Now, when Yochanan ben Zakkai formulated and he put the Mishnah together, it was a beautiful piece of oral Torah, just put as the Mishnah, and it should have been that way. It should not have been tampered with or taken in different directions. When the scribes and Pharisees took the Mishnah and started debating on it and having opinions upon it and writing upon it and taking to different directions, the Gemara that evolved out of it was put together and the Talmud was formed, right? So, in many ways, the Talmud is a product, you can say, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because it's dabbling with that ipka mistabara, dabbling with the intuitive and counterintuitive. And Yeshua is saying, stop it. You all are going down this road which is going to bring unfruitfulness. So that was what was happening at that point of time. That is why when we look at the Mishnah, which is a beautiful document, it is a beautiful, I'm telling you, it's a beautiful document, but it should have been left untouched. We look at the Gemara, it's the opinion of the rabbis and the scribes, and many of them had some great opinions of it. They had, without any doubt. There were some of them that had some real horrible opinions, and I agree to that. Some of them are outrightly, just unwanted. There are a lot of unwanted things. Therefore, we do not touch them. But to study the Mishnah and to a certain extent the Talmud for what it is saying and to understand, to differentiate between the light and the darkness is essential, not for all people. For those who are meant to understand and who have the ability to separate between the light and the darkness, it's important. So I just want to tell you that the Torah was very simple. The oral Torah, the Mishnah, was very, very simple, but it went in a different direction together. And this is what Yeshua was trying to rectify during his day. Which is why when he got overwhelmed by what the Torah was producing in his generation, by way of the scribes and the Pharisees, the way the path they were taking, Yeshua cursed the fig tree. Do you remember the reason why he cursed the fig tree? Because the fig tree resembles the Torah. And this is the reason why, because he was fed up. He was, to use the right word, he was really frustrated. And there was no reason for him to curse the tree. But now you'll understand what was happening with Yeshua. This is the deepness of what I wanted to share with you today, friends. And that was the dabbling of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But let's look at Garden Eden again. Now, if there was in the Garden of Eden, if God had put a tree of life, shouldn't reasonably be also there a tree of death? So they would have been, there is a tree of life, but shouldn't there have been also a tree of death? Why is there a tree of life and a tree of the knowledge of good and evil? You can scratch your head how much ever you want, and you're going to be like, what is this all about? I know there's a tree of life there, and there should be a tree of death. Why is there no tree of death mentioned at all, but a tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Why? Because there cannot be a tree of death, because God is life and God is producing life only. There is no such thing as death. Death is a consequence of something that is not life. You cannot eat of the tree of death. No, you will partake of death because it's a consequence. But to dabble in the knowledge of good and evil, that is a place that is neither there on top or neither is it down. It's in this limbo place which is so difficult to get out and to be entrapped in that. And that's what Yeshua came. He says, I'm going to get you out of this place. Y'all just mix yourself up in this knowledge of good and evil. But the Torah was given for a simple reason. To be aware, as I said last time, to understand the difference between light and darkness. If you're a person who is walking through life and your spiritual eyes are open, you will see light and darkness with your inner eyes. You'll be able to see the light and darkness with your inner eyes. And if you're not able to see the light and darkness with your inner eyes, something is wrong. friends. Something is really wrong. So the commandments were given to separate the light from the darkness, and to fill yourself with the light, and to perform the commandments that separates the evil from the good, and to pursue the evil. It is that simple. It's not complicated. So, if there was in Garden Eden a tree of life, should there also not have been a tree of death? Why is there a tree of knowledge of good and evil? That is why in the Sphirot, the level of dart is considered a bridge that takes in either good or evil, or a mixture of affecting the rest of the body. This is so important to understand. Who is this mixed multitude? Now look at this. If I am looking and saying, okay, at that point of time, not all the scribes and Pharisees were bad. Okay, not all the scribes and Pharisees were bad. Yeshua had an amazing relationship with a lot of them, and he had a very difficult relationship with most of them. The mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, they were called the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav was the one that really caused them to sin in the golden calf. Do you know the gematria is 474 of Erev Rav, which is equal to that knowledge. It's the same gematria. And even in our time today, we have to be careful that if a dart is connected to the wrong source, if it's not connected to the divine will, and the improper knowledge that is mixed with the evil inclination inside each one of us, then we shall be known by our fruits. This is what even Rav Shaul says, warns us at the time in the Brit Chadash. He says, knowledge puffs up. He's talking specifically of this. Knowledge puffs up. And this is where we have to be careful in our congregations. We will find overeducated, brain dead, common people and leaders who are puffed up, but they're not able to differentiate between the light and the darkness. And hopefully, none of us are in this category. I pray that God should look upon us favorably, that we should never be in this category. If ever we are in this category, God, please take us out. And we should never ever fall to the Erev Rav. We will develop our own righteousness, like what they did then. And you know what's going to happen? We're going to be counterproductive to the body of Christ and to Yeshua himself. And Yeshua is going to have the same task which he had then with you and me. So we need to be very, very careful, friends. And I'm saying this and I'm teaching all this today because this is all within Achashverosh. Now you understand the deep level, why we talk about the king and the Keter and the crown. This is all happening out there. And until Achashverosh is not able to overcome the Yetzer Hara and concentrate on the Yetzer HaTov, no change is going to happen. But the interesting part, Shimon ben Bar Yochai was the person who actually formulated the foundation of the Kabbalah. Okay. He was a guy who went in with his son and lived in this cave for about 32 years or something like this, a little more than that. And when he came out with the Kabbalah. That's what it is said, I don't know. So, what he said in this book called the Zohar. So the Zohar, which is basically the book of illumination. Zohar is enlightenment, okay? The radiance. Zohar is radiance. He wrote the Zohar. And the Zohar in so many ways, is the voice that's opposite to the Talmud of its day. Mind you, he was a Pharisee himself. Okay. And he came out and voicing him. There were subsequent many sages like the Ramban and the Rambam and all these subsequent sages who also voiced the same problem. He says the enemy is within because either we are dabbling with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or we are just accepting the light that's given to us by the way of the Torah. And the Zohar, in so many ways, is the opposite, the counterintuition to what was happening with the great debates of the Zugot and the pairs and what was being written and all the oral Torah and all that stuff. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I am not putting down the sages, Chazal, the Mishnah, the Talmud. I'm saying nothing. In fact, in so many ways, I do study all of that because I want to know what the truth is all about. But in certain areas, when there's a little way off the mark, we have to get that back in line. And hopefully, we will all be able to rectify and bring all this back in line. And I pray fervently every day for my Jewish brothers and sisters. The Hasidim, the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, they're very precious to me. But if we get one in all of this, we will be able to rectify. Friends, if we just, understand the light of Yeshua, that's it. That's all that's required. That's all that's required. Okay, so don't get me wrong. Knowing the Mishnah is of great importance. And learning, because they're just simple oral instructions. Debating, making elaborate knowledge-based instructions, it's not needed at all. Even today, that is why in so many ways, I am not for Christian apologetics. I don't like it. Because you're building and you're debating and you're building and you're building, it is going to lead to nowhere. You do not need to defend your faith to anybody in this world. Don't do it. The only thing that comes out from your mouth is saying that I believe in God and I believe in Son Yeshua, and that's it. Do what you want. I'm not going to defend anything. That's it. Leave it. To get down to Christian apologetics, and it goes on to volumes, and it is creating words over words, concept of concept, sin upon sin. You're dabbling with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't do it. This is my opinion, friends. I don't know about anybody else. Okay. So this is the interesting part which I wanted to share with you all. This is the task that Yeshua had 2,000 years ago. Now you can understand what Yeshua was going through, and what he came to change. There is a portion in the Zohar called the Re'am Mehemna. It's one of those parts of the Kabbalah. Re'am Mehemna simply means the faithful shepherd. And it is stated in all these Zohar 11, 14a. If you read it properly, if you know to read, you have to be trained to read all this. So don't try and read all this and try and find out. You will get lost, right? You need to be guided in the Zohar. It's not an easy book at all. It's a chapter in the Zohar that talks about the faithful shepherd who will destroy this evil inclination. Exposition of the commandments and the prohibitions of the Torah. It's scattered to the bulk of volumes 2 and 3, the bulk of the Re'am Mehemna can be found. It is the rules for the separation between good and evil, without debate, without useless verbal antagonism. And that brings us, when we look at chapter 3 and we understand what Haman's all about, what Mordecai is all about, what is their source, their root, now you understand where we are today. So I leave it with that. This is an explosive topic. We have so much to talk about, but this is not the time. Okay, let's go now to chapter 4. This is the chapter of Chesed. This is the fourth of the Sfirot, because the Jews in prayer. In this chapter, we see the aspect of Chesed, kindness and grace, where the Jewish people fast and they pray and collectively ask for forgiveness and receive divine protection from God. In chapter 4, 1 to 4, it says, ومردكاي يدعى يدخل الشير ناسي ويقرأ مردكاي بقداف ويلباش شاق ويفار ويتصاب بالتوق هير ويتزاق Gadola Umara. And when Mordecai learned that all that had happened and he seen what Haman had done and the edict that was given, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and he went to the city crying out loudly and bitterly until he came in front of the gate of the palace, for no one could enter the palace gate wearing sackcloth. And also in every province that the king's command and decree reached, there was great mourning among the Jews with fasting, weeping, wailing, and everybody lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maidens and eunuchs came and informed her, the queen was greatly agitated. She sent kindness. She sent clothing for Mordecai to wear so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he refused. You know what this means? Big day to dress yourselves in clothing in the biblical context. Clothing is a very spiritual thing. Cloaks mean something, garments mean something, big de kehuna, the garments of the high priest mean something. Every piece of clothing that you wear has a spiritual root in the heavens. And for Mordecai to tear it, do you know what that means? That everything is just torn. He's just back to Garden of Eden. He's just naked, completely naked. And what does the Bath Kol do? Sends him to kindness, sends him clothing. He says, please wear this, Mordecai. Please wear this. That's why it's a level of kindness. Then chapter 5, Gevurah. You know, she tells Mordecai, she says, go, assemble all the Jews who live in Shushan and fast in my behalf and fast that I am not slaughtered or killed. Do not eat or drink for 3 days and night or day. I and my maidens will observe the same fast. Then I shall go to the king, though it is contrary to the law. No one can just enter before the king in his palace, because if you do that, you will be put to death immediately. You had to be summoned or called before the king. But she says, I'm going to defy that. And I'm going to have might. I'm going to use braveness and might, Gevurah, and I will go before the king. And she says, if I am to perish, so let it be, I will perish. On the third day, Esther put on the royal apparel, stood in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the king's palace, while the king was sitting on his royal throne, in the throne room facing the entrance of the palace. As soon as the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor. Wow. Isn't it beautiful that God is working in the background? Does it say Akash Verosh out here? No, it says king. The king extended to Esther the golden scepter, which he had in his hand, and the scepter approached and touched the tip of the scepter. What troubles you, O queen? The king asked her. What is your request? Even to half the kingdom shall be granted to you. She, after Mordecai told her, you are born for such a time as this. If you don't do this in your generation, profit will come from somewhere else. Salvation will come from somewhere else. Then she girds herself up and she says, let it be. If I have to die, I will die. But I will do this. That is might. That's Gevurah. Chapter 6, Tiferet, beauty, truth and transformation. Now you can see God actually working in Akashvarosh. That night the king could not sleep, and he ordered the books of records, the annals to be brought, and it was read to the king. There it was found that Mordecai denounced Bigtan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs. And then he says, what honor has been given and conferred to Mordecai for this? The king inquired, nothing has been done. And so he honors him. And truth comes out, revelation comes out. The hidden things that are hidden is coming out. You see, that is truth. Tiferet, beauty and truth, transformation that's coming out. Chapter 6. Slowly the revelation is coming out. And then he asks Haman this, and Haman says, do this and do this. And he says, okay, take Mordecai and honor him. And Haman's face falls, right? This is the fight. Let royal garb which the king has worn be brought, and a horse on which the king has ridden, and those whose head a royal diadem has been set. So a keter has been put on Mordecai's head. Keter, Malchut, Berosho. Man, this is great. And let the attire and the horse be put in the charge of the king's noble courtiers. Let the man whom the king desires to honor be attired, paraded on the horse through the city square, while they proclaim before him, this is what is done for the man whom the king desires to honor. Quick, he tells Haman, do it immediately, and do not leave anything that you have proposed. Wow. Chapter 7, Netzach. Victory. What is victory? Haman is hanged. Then Karbona, one of the eunuchs in the attendants of the king, said, what is more, my lord, a stake has been standing at Haman's house, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, the man whose words saved the king. The king impaled him, and the king ordered, and Haman and his 10 sons were impaled on that. So they impaled Haman on the stake he had set up for Mordecai, and the king's fury was abated. Chapter 8, Hod, thanksgiving and splendor. Mordecai left the king's presence in royal robes of blue and white in splendor, with a magnificent crown of gold and a mantle of fine linen and purple wool. And the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries. The Jews enjoyed the light and the gladness, happiness and honor. And in every province, in every city, when the king commanded, the decree arrived, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday, and many of the people of the land professed to be Jews, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. Friends, I tell you, it is so easy to just read the Bible in ways that, I've done my Bible study, this is my portion for the week, I've read my Bible. People tell me, I've read the Bible 5 times, this is really good. You want to read it again? Sit with me. Chapter 9, Mordecai makes a foundation for all time. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent dispatches to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Achashverosh, near and far, charging them to observe the 14th and 15th days of Adar, which is today. This is the month of Adar. Every year, the same day on which the Jews enjoyed relief from their foes, the same month which had been transformed for them from one of grief to mourning to one of festive joy. They were to observe them as days of fasting and merrymaking, and as an occasion for sending gifts to one another and presents to the poor. They were put in foundation now. They were established as a people with power to be reckoned with. Mordecai is the head, as the premier, to be established. That's Yesod, that's foundation. Chapter 10, Malchut, kingdom. It says, for Mordecai the Jew ranked next to King Achashverosh and was highly regarded by the Jews and popular with the multitude of his brethren. He sought the good of his people and interceded for the welfare of his kindred. These days of Purim shall be observed at the proper time as Mordecai the Jew, and now Queen Esther has obligated them to do, and just as they assumed for themselves and their descendants the obligation of the fast with their lamentations. And Esther's ordinance validating these observances of Purim was recorded in a scroll which we are reading today. God, in all his power, does not work with miracles and external wonders to effect change on the earth. He does not need to, my friends. I tell you, all these wonderful miracles we are chasing after, it's not necessary. If it happens, praise God. Wonderful thing. Praise God for it. But don't run after all these miracles. There is a life which is more beautiful. We just have to understand his ways, walk in his commandments. And the natural order will be commanded by God to work for our benefit, for God himself to give us honor, prosperity, life, and long living on earth. Friends, Baruch Hashem, I hope you'll have learned something great about the book of Esther. And this is only one level of understanding of it. There are so many levels within the book that we are just untouched and untapped. And I just hope that everybody, I just hope that everybody is able to, understand the depth of Esther. And this year we said we're going to do something different. And I was so happy that we read Megillah and we done a Mikra, a reading of the book of Esther, and today we done the Shiur of it. We studied the deepness, how it affects our life today. How does God affect change in this world without the great miracles? But He's doing such a wonderful thing. I hope you all are being blessed. Keep the Yeshua in mind. We are trying to reach out to people. We're trying to build something good for people. Keep us in prayer and support, friends. Okay, I leave you all with this, and I see everybody for Tefillah in the morning at 7 o'clock for prayer. So please come in. We have Shakari place in the morning. Next weekend on Saturday, on the 22nd of Saturday, we have a very special conference, a business conference which I'm putting together, and I've been sending out for people to join. Okay, we're going to have it at the yeshiva. Couple of people have already enrolled for them to come, and it's also going to be online. And I request everybody to please come for that. We will go into depth of what we studied today. In that depth, and hopefully in bigger depth, is going to go to with Parnasa, our livelihood, our business environment, our prosperity of our soul, of our physical things, or biblical concepts we want to study, friends. So please do come and enroll for it. I look forward to everything. Okay, I'm going to take questions now if anybody has anything.